and welcome to this episode of Crate Conversations. I'm excited to be here today with Dan Newman. He is our construction code official here in Brick Township. And with the summer season coming up and lots of people getting ready to open their pools and go swimming, we thought it would be a good time to have a conversation about pool safety and some of the things that you can do around your home and your pool to keep you and your children safe. So thank you for coming and joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. This type of talk scares some people, but we don't mean it that way. I don't mean to scare people from not using their pool, to be in a panic. I hope everyone enjoys their pool all through the summer. But there is some safety concerns that people should be aware of, and some maintenance that should be done to your pool area every year, and it's important. There is up to 390 deaths a year in drowning in this country in swimming pools.
That's a lot.
It's a lot, and about 75% of them are children under 15, and a significant number of them, about 67%, are children less than 3. Mm-hmm. So it is important. It's the number one leading cause of death, of unintentional death in children younger than 4. So it is a serious safety concern. Mm-hmm. But you can limit those dangers by simply maintaining your pool equipment. Okay. So the general rules would be that are put out by Consumer Product Safety Commission are things like assign a water watcher, an individual to watch the water when children are in the pool. They shouldn't be reading a book. They should have a phone handy to call 911, but they shouldn't be playing on their phone. Right. It should be that person should know how to swim. It would be better if that person knew CPR. Right. But the idea would be that person should be focused on the water.
Well, having had kids, I'm just going to point out, most of the time they're saying, watch me. So
right.
You really can't be on your phone anyway.
and then the other thing is some studies show that about 70% of pool drownings, alcohol is a contributing factor. Okay. So the person who is the pool watcher shouldn't be drinking. Mm-hmm. That's kind of basic stuff. Also, if a child is missing, a toddler is missing, the first place you should look is in the pool. Your pool. Mm-hmm. About 77% of toddlers who drown in pools were missing for less than 5 minutes. Oh my so goodness. It happens very quickly. So you should never look where they played. First place to look is in that pool, and about 70% of them were not expected to be around the pool. They were out in the back playing, and you didn't think they were going to be anywhere near the pool, and they wound up in the pool. Also, a thing that most people don't realize is they say, "Well, I'll hear the splash, or I'll hear them call for help." No, little kids go under the water very quietly with almost no splash at all, and never come up to make a noise. So it's incredibly dangerous. Those type of things you should go on. It's a website called poolsafely.gov. Okay. It gives you a lot of that information. It gives you some basic requirements for a pool. But my end of it is more the maintenance for when the pool was installed. Okay. There's a requirement that you put a barrier around a pool, 4 feet in height, non-climbable. That means that the horizontal members in like a board-on-board fence, a kid can use those like a ladder and get right over the pool. So it's got to be a solid, non-climbable fence. It's got to have a gate that opens away from the pool, is self-closing, self-latching, has hardware that's 54 inches high to release it, even though it's a 48-inch pool. That's when you see those rods with a little ball on top of it. There's a reason for that. Sure. A young child will not be able to reach it. And if they do get a bucket or a chair or something to stand on to release it,
coordination.
Well, it's kids. Yeah. Kids are, their brain isn't quite as developed as adults. Believe it or not, studies have shown that they'll put a bucket in front of that gate, get up on a chair, release the mechanism, but when it opens, because it opens away from the pool, the bucket's in the way, and they won't get through. Right. They're not developmentally advanced enough to move the bucket to the side of the gate, open it up, and get through. So it's an important part of pool safety to make sure that fence is maintained and self-latching, and that's probably the most important thing for drowning for kids, neighborhood kids outside your property. When you're on the property and watching the kids, it's more the water watcher because the person is by the pool. The other thing is there is actually electrocution hazards with the pool. There's two different things that you should always be aware of. One is your GFCI, which is ground fault circuit interrupter. It's the little switch in your kitchen and your bathroom that has a test and the reset button.
Yeah.
They should be tested monthly if you believe the manufacturer.
Okay.
The way to test them, obviously, is just hit the test button. If the reset button pops out, it's good. It's good to double check it, make sure the power is off, and then hit reset. I personally prefer using a electrical tester. There's some cheaper ones. I wouldn't recommend necessarily this as much as I'd recommend ones that have the button that allows the GFI to trip.
Oh, okay.
This is about $20. You plug it in, you hit the button. If it pops, you know it's working. If it lights up green in the center of this specific one, it's wired properly. Yeah, a simple $20 tester can make sure that there isn't an issue.
Safe. Right.
It's safe. I would test the pool GFI at least once a month. Inside your house, technically manufacturers say once a month, but I'm not going to run around in my kitchen and do it. But I do it once in a while, probably once a year.
Yeah.
I do make sure that it goes off with one of these testers.
Well, the pool, I think, is especially important, I guess, because you're kind of mixing electric and water.
Yes. And that
in the same area. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's actually the second part of what you have to maintain. If you have a modern pool, and pool prior to 2008, you might not have it. But in a modern pool, we recognize the danger of what's called equipotential bonding. What that means is equipotential is a power that's generated by moving water, the pump running, and you can actually get a charge associated with the pump area. It could run through water, it can run through a piece of metal. So if you touch something that has the charge and you touch something that doesn't, you just became the contact between the two.
Yeah.
And that is, it's similar to static electricity, like you walked on a carpet, but it's not exactly the same. It can be pretty powerful. It can cause injury, and yes, it can even cause death if the charge is large enough. So in a modern pool, you have to take a wire underground that runs all the way around the pool. If you have concrete, the rebar reinforcement in the concrete is tied to that wire.
Okay.
Every piece of metal around the pool is tied to that wire. The outlets are all tied to that wire, so that the charge is equalized. So you never become the easiest path for that charge to run through, so you don't get shocked. Unfortunately, a lot of people will take like a metal ladder, and there will be a bond to the equipotential bond. They'll disconnect that to pull the ladder out. When they put the ladder back in, they don't reconnect it. And that is dangerous.
Okay.
And people confuse that bond with the ground. It's a little different. A ground is if there's a short, the ground will take the power back into the ground through a grounding rod. That's a different thing, but it's also a safety issue.
Right.
So if you pulled your pool filter out, there's probably a grounding lug that you should be reconnecting, a little green wire. Make sure you reconnect that. That also goes back to that exopotential bonding grid to alleviate any charge that could affect your pool. There's one study that shows about 60 deaths a year from electrocution
on a
pool. On pools. So it is important. And like I said, I would always check the GFCI with an electrical tester, not just pushing the button.
Right.
A couple other safety issues, again, on a modern pool is a rope. There's actually a requirement in a modern pool that you have a rope at the junction where the shallow end starts going down.
Okay.
You see it a lot in commercial pools. It's now required to be there for residential pools.
Okay.
But it's only just hooked on. So people can take it off if they want to do laps or whatever.
Right.
If you have kids in the pool, put the rope back up.
Okay.
If you don't have a rope, go buy one and put one up. It's not required on older pools, but it is required on new pools.
Okay.
So there's a lot of those type of safety issues. you should never dive in a pool unless there's a diving board.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of obvious.
Mm-hmm.
If there is no diving board, a kid can hit the slope going down or the low end and break their neck. And the other one, again, modern pools are different than old pools, is an entrapment hazard. We've had many cases of kids getting stuck on the bottom drain of a pool and not being able to get out. There's a law, it was passed in 2008, Virginia Graham-Baker Act. Virginia Graham-Baker was a 7-year-old girl at a pool, in a public pool. It was actually at a hotel. Okay. She got entrapped on a bottom drain of a spa, of a hot tub. Her mother tried to get her out, could not get her because the suction was so strong.
Wow.
On an 8-inch drain, you can get 350 pounds of suction, and she was stuck. She drowned. 2 men jumped in trying to get her off. By that point, she probably had already passed away. They actually, when they finally got her released, it was because the bottom drain broke.
Oh my gosh!
It actually snapped off.
Yeah.
That law, Virginia Graham-Baker was the granddaughter of our former Secretary of State, James Baker.
Oh. Okay.
And his daughter-in-law was instrumental in getting the law passed. In a residential pool today, again, a modern pool, you can not have a single bottom drain. You have to have 2 drains, and they have to be separated by 3 feet. There's still a small chance that you get a kid on each drain, but that's pretty...
Right, at the same time. Right.
The other thing is, if you have an older pool, when the drain is a flat drain, which a lot of older pools have, change it, like immediately, to a dome one. It's harder to get entrapped on a dome drain.
Right.
Should never have a flat drain. They are very dangerous. In commercial pools, public pools, hotels, condominium associations, the Virginia Graham-Baker Act required them to change those drains to also add a device. It's a suction release device, so that if the suction suddenly builds up in the system, it releases and turns the motor off and allows somebody to get off. You don't need that in a house. However, I will tell you, if you have an old pool and you only have a single drain, I'd install one. It just goes into the drain line before it goes in the filter. And actually, there's some filter motor stands that they have one built right in. You can screw it in, and it provides that same level of protection. It's not required, but I would certainly consider putting one in my pool if I had a pool. So there's a lot of issues like that. So.
All right, just really one quick question. What about those pools that are like temporary pools?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, and it's actually on my list. We call them storable pools. Okay. A storable pool that is more than 24 inches in depth. So the little plastic ones your baby sits in, it doesn't count. But if it's 24 inches in depth, it needs a permit. It only needs a permit the first year you put it up. You can take it down and put it back up every year with that one. But what are we looking at? We're looking at basically the barrier. You still need a barrier around that pool, a fence, something. And the main concern with that is if you have that storable pool and you leave it up, we're not really thinking that your child is going to drown in that. It's the neighbor's child. Right. The 3-year-old who wanders over, is playing in their backyard and winds up falling in your pool, they will drown in that pool. People don't realize that about 9% of drownings happen in storable pools. Okay. So it's not totally unheard of that they drown. So 9% would be about 30 deaths a year in a storable pool. So you still need that barrier. You still need a permit. We check it. We make sure the barrier is appropriate. We go through that whole process with the storable pool. Great. So, that's good info. Yeah, and you can. If you're ever concerned about learning more, poolsafely.gov, it's a Consumer Product Safety Commission website. It gives you a lot of advice on how to maintain your pool safely. Oh, great. So it's always good to go on that and read if you have a swimming pool.
Excellent. That's a lot of good information. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. We
So,
appreciate it.
I'm sorry, it was
That's all good though.
a lot
It's
of
good
information
info
about
as we
that.
head into the season. So
Yeah.
we're going to have that information about that website up on the screen, so you can check that out for more safety. And thank you for joining us today,
Thank you
Dan,
for
for that
having
good
me.
info. And we'll see you on the next great conversation.